good, y'all? It's your boy Kingcal516 live in the mix. And this is the Swiss Flames podcast. So I want to get right into the New York Knicks and the management team they assembled for the last few seasons that's taken over. And I believe is doing a great job. And I think this is very important for the NBA moving forward. So Leon Rose, who's the president of basketball operations with William Wesley, also known to us as Worldwide West, who is the vice president of basketball operations, basically. When the New York Knicks brought in these two gentlemen, it changed everything as far as just immediately the perception of the Knicks, because these two are guys, you know, if you think about Leon Rose, you know, he was a big-time agent at CAA, and just Worldwide West, the contacts and the amount of people, you know, he has great relationships with, the network of people in his sphere of influence. It added immediate credibility to the Knicks just to add these guys. You know what I mean? But just adding credibility is not enough. You got to go out there and get the job done on the basketball court. But in a couple of years that they've been a part of the New York Knicks organization, they have shown a great combination of patience, which is important, because the reality is the pressure of New York being in that market and the pressure of the fan base who wants to see a winning contender immediately, I think put a lot of pressure on a lot of previous presidents. A lot of previous management regimes, I think, really got overwhelmed, to say the least. You know what I mean? And so they kept Scott Perry in the fold, you know what I'm saying, to be the GM. And so they kept somebody familiar who was familiar with what was going on, you know. But to see the job that these guys have done to turn around the Knicks organization is incredible to me, and I think it should be well commended. If you're a New York Knicks fan today, you should hold your head up, because these guys and the nail in the coffin for me about these guys was this past offseason, because it was a great offseason for them with all that salary cap space to spend it unwisely and fall back into the Knick ways that we've seen in previous seasons of bringing in these overpaid, past their prime veterans who are not going to get the job done. And they didn't do that. So the patience that they've been showing has been tremendous. And it's definitely commendable as far as that goes. And so if you look at it, this past offseason was a great test. They had all this cap space. They had a lot of free agents. And what they do? Well, they know that they just made the playoffs last season with the core group of guys they had. And they also know it wasn't enough. I mean, by the end of it, Derrick Rose, my goodness, was exhausted. He was overused, exhausted, overplayed. You know what I mean? Julius Randle didn't show up, but that was his first playoffs, and so that's a learning experience, right? But maybe we've seen that Julius Randle is not ready to be a number one guy leading your team, right? That's okay. These situations are to kind of show you what you have. Once you get in the playoffs, you start seeing how your team responds to the playoffs. Now you know what you can do to improve. And so what they did was basically bring back the whole team, because you had a lot of free agents. So you got Derrick Rose back in the fold. You got Nerlens Noel back in the fold. You know what I mean? These were some key, free agents. You lost Reggie Bullock, but that's okay. So basically they signed back the majority of their own free agents. And then they added some pieces. You had Evan Fournier, because they were in the market for a point guard. So you had Evan Fournier, which is a solid pickup. You know what I'm saying? So then you kind of surprise everybody. Towards the end, Kemba Walker gets a buyout. Now you bring in Kemba Walker. So now you have a very interesting dynamic. Now, Kemba Walker is not going to move the needle defensively. The New York Knicks was one of the best defensive teams in the league. But you got Mitchell Robinson, you got Nerlens Noel as your rim protectors. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, not a lot of teams have both centers on their roster, on the depth chart, that can come in and change the whole complexion of the game from a rim protector standpoint. The New York Knicks do have that currently. And it's still going to be a great defensive team, even with Kemba Walker not being the greatest of defenders. But now you got a guy in Kemba Walker and also a guy in Evan Fournier, you know what I'm saying, who can shoot the ball. These are pretty good, solid shooters. They're pretty consistent shooters, and they can shoot the three ball. You know what I'm saying? The New York Knicks definitely didn't necessarily move the needle last year in three-point shooting. So with adding those two guys, I do believe the three-point shooting will get a little better. But even adding those two guys, Julius Randle's continuous progression moving forward, can he hit another level? It will be a key question for the Knicks. And also RJ Barrett, will he take his game to another level? And I think this is an important season for RJ Barrett. I think this is going to be an extremely important season for RJ Barrett on the merit of, can he take that next step forward? And so we'll see what happens there. But typically, like I said, in previous seasons, the New York Knicks would have done craziness. You know what I mean? Like, in previous seasons, they would have been the team trading with Boston Celtics earlier in the offseason to get Kemba Walker in on that expensive deal. They didn't do that this time around. What they did was wait for Kemba to secure a buyout. So now Kemba's there on a minimum deal. Sorry, he signed for like $8 million. So Kemba Walker at $8 million is a low-risk move, right? So they have to give Kemba Walker a little bit of money because in that buyout he lost a good deal of money. So Knicks help compensate that. But to bring Kemba Walker on $8 million with his little injury history, that's still a low risk deal with a high reward possibility. It's very smart management. And so the patience that Leon Rose and World Wide West have, the understanding that it's not going to be overnight success, but at the same time they're building up assets, which is key for if a superstar becomes available. And I already can see that they have identified who are game-changing players that they might be interested if they become available. Who are they going to trade for? Right? So they're not going to waste all these young assets that they have, the RJ Barretts of the world, the Mitchell Robinsons. They're not going to waste these pieces to throw away just for a name. But in the past, Knicks management has been impatient and we're just bringing a name, saying to create that buzz. But not this management group. I can tell they have identified star players if they come available, who these assets will be given up for. They got great draft capital as well in the future. So they have draft picks to send. They have some young players to send. And you know what I mean? And so the New York Knicks are going to be an interesting team. The East is going to be a little tougher this year because I think Indiana's going to prove. I think Atlanta has a lot of confidence in what they did last season. I think they're going to prove. We're going to see what happens with Philadelphia in regards to Ben Simmons to see where they might stand. But Brooklyn, healthy, is a dominant team. You got the Milwaukee Bucks, just won the championship. They're going to be dominant. So the East is still a beast. And I'm not saying that the New York Knicks are ready to compete for a championship yet in the East. But if they keep building the way they're doing, they're just basically a superstar away from really contending, the way I look at it. And that's impressive. And the key for any team and any brand that you're building, especially when you want to attract key free agents or when you want to attract superstar players, is to build stability. It's to show that your front office is competent. So even though New York is a big market and MSG is one of the most favorite arenas for most players to play in, I mean, we've heard the likes of Zion Williamson and what he feels about MSG. We've heard LeBron, what he feels about MSG. Despite all of that, you still haven't attracted these guys to play for you for the long haul because of the fact that your brand was hurt. You know what I'm saying? You got Charles Oakley. Oh my gosh. You got Charles Oakley being escorted out. He was the heart and soul of the New York Knicks when he played. And so the brand of the New York Knicks was at an all-time low. And when they brought in these guys, Leon Rose and World Wide West, part of their agenda was to help build back that brand to be liked and credible and to be admired. Because even throughout all that negativity around the Knicks, that New York market is big. The New York Knicks is still valued the most money out of any NBA team. It's the New York Knicks 1 and then the Lakers number 2. That always surprises people. But I always have to tell people how big basketball is in New York City. Basketball is the number one sport to me in New York City. And this is coming from me, a New Yorker. I was born and raised in New York. New York is a sports town. They love their football. They love their Giants. They love their Jets. They love the Yankees. They love their Mets. But make no mistake about it, basketball to me is number one. As big as the Yankees are. And I'm not going to say, New York loves the Knicks more than the Yankees. I'm going to say they're both just as big. But the sport of basketball is bigger than baseball. in general. Where do some of the top recruits in basketball come from? New York, Chicago, LA. When you think of football, where do the best recruits come from? Texas, Florida. Basketball is a big deal in New York. The New York Knicks are valued higher than any other team in basketball in the NBA. Despite all the losing seasons, the Garden still sells out. So as far as market and fan base, it's been ready for contenders. So last year's playoffs, you saw how loud, it was tremendously loud in the Garden. Those fans were rocking. It was unbelievable, the energy in the Garden. And it looks like the New York Knicks are going to be contending and going to be a playoff team for years to come. You know what I mean? I think they're one superstar away from really contending. But they're going to be, I believe, a little bit better this season. I don't know how that's going to stack up in the East. That's going to be stronger, in my opinion. But these guys are going to have another year together. You know, the core of this team is going to have another year together. They already have that chemistry. And they're not really adding a whole bunch of brand new pieces to try to figure it out. So they're going to have chemistry from the start, which is going to be great for this organization. So I'm very curious to see how this all unfolds in the Knicks in the next few seasons. But they're on the right track. And I'm expecting much more to come. This has been your boy Kingcal516. This has been the Swiss Flame Podcast. Be sure to check out our website at www.swissflames.com. Hit us up on Twitter at Swiss Flames. Check us out on the Facebook page at Swiss Flames Podcast. Remember, you can listen to the Swiss Flame Podcast all over the podcast world. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify. We up in there, Player FM. We're all over there. Please check us out. Share, like, comment, and let me know what you think about the New York Knicks and the direction they're going. With that said, we're going to sign off, y'all.